So we can get rolling. Hello, everyone, and happy Wednesday. And it's such a pleasure to see you here today. Welcome to the July YVSC community meeting. I know several people also additionally are looking for the recording, so it is with happy hearts that we welcome Matt Kireker as YVSC's new policy director, and he brings such capability and capacity to this role. So thank you for joining in this opportunity to hear from Matt and meet him. I am Michelle Stewart, Executive Director of Yampa Valley Sustainability Council, and really thank you for joining us. I hope that you're having a wonderful summer. For those that know, YVSC was established as a nonprofit organization in 2009, and we remain guided by the mission to serve as a leader, resource, and catalyst for building a sustainable and resilient Yampa Valley region. These topic-focused monthly community meetings are designed to convene community partners and members for presentations and discussions on key issues and initiatives so that we can learn together, ask questions, connect, and find ways to meaningfully contribute to the sustainable and resilient future we need. Today, we have the great pleasure of having YVSC's new and first ever policy director, Matt Kireker, who we call Matt Kireker, joining us as our featured speaker. Matt comes to this position with extensive experience and capability, as you'll learn today. And we at YVSC are simply delighted to have him joining our team and our many important collaborations and work with all of you. YVSC recognizes that now is a pivotal time to add capability and capacity to our organization's work, connecting local and regional programs and funding with those of the state and, where possible, federally. Even while the new federal policies continue to gain clarity and dates by which they will take effect, there is an equally powerful call to action to maintain on-the-ground programming and partnerships that serve our communities, lands, and natural resources as much as possible so we stay on track to a resilient and vibrant future. Now is an essential time to lead locally while continuing to act as a model for change at the state and federal level. We see Matt as an incredibly valuable addition to our team and our valley-wide collaborations in this work, assuredly demonstrating the ways transforming knowledge of change to needed actions is our collective way forward. The goal of today's meeting is to give all of you a chance to meet Matt, learn about his professional background and how he approaches his work with us here in the Valley, and importantly, engage in dialogue so that Matt has an opportunity to meet the many of you who are here in this meeting today and hear your questions and comments. Today's meeting structure is as follows. Matt will speak for about 20 to 25 minutes. We're flexible, and then I'll open up the floor to Q&A. During the Q&A, please do self-introduce yourself. Many of you might know Matt from his previous role, but please do take a moment to self-introduce and then share your question or your comment. I do have several individuals lined up during the Q&A, but please, we tried to book this as an in-person conversation, but maybe not surprisingly, we couldn't find a room. So see this as our virtual room where we're all gathered around the table. And so I really do invite you to engage during that Q&A. And as usual, please do remember to keep your microphones muted when you're not speaking. And so now at this time, it is my pleasure to introduce Matt Kireker, our featured speaker. So Matt brings more than 10 years of professional experience in government and policy-related work to his role at YVSC, as well as a proven track record of driving policy and government-related strategic initiatives and delivering results. Prior to joining YVSC from 2019 to 2025, Matt served as a regional representative and then as regional director in Northwest and North Central Colorado, working as a regional director for U.S. Senator Michael Bennet. As regional director, Matt led policy development and engagement with local and state elected officials, stakeholder groups, and political appointees in the agricultural and water, forestry and public lands, energy, and economic development spaces. Matt and Senator Bennet played a central role in driving more than $40 million in federal government funding to local governments, nonprofit organizations, and private businesses in Routt and Moffat counties. So he brings a suite of connections and hours of collaborative work with key regional partners to his role with YVSC and the collaborative initiatives we continue to build with all of you. Prior to working with Senator Bennet, Matt worked as a campaign manager for Commissioner Melton's successful campaign in 2018, and before that as a chief media strategist for 5 years at a media ad company based in San Francisco, California. Matt holds a bachelor's degree in politics and a certificate in American Studies from Princeton University, And he is in Steamboat. He's lived in Steamboat since 2018 with his wife, Karen, who is an ER nurse at UC Health, Yampa Valley Medical Clinic, as well as their two sons, Wesley and Brooks. So while I am positive that Senator Bennett is daily missing Matt's strategic and relational approach to public service and leadership, we at YVSC are delighted to welcome Matt to YVSC as our first and new policy director, and are really glad that he decided to course change and join us at this important time for our work as an organization advancing decarbonization and resilience in Northwest Colorado. So at this time, Matt, it is my great pleasure to turn the floor over to you, and welcome.
Oof. Thanks, Michelle. Boy, that's a lot to live up to. So yeah, it's a pleasure. I'm really happy to be introducing myself, leading today's conversation. When Michelle said, you can chat for 25 minutes, I hope I can keep your attention for most of that time. But it is really nice. I see a lot of familiar faces. Hi, Julie Suter with Congressman Negusa's office. So, former counterparts, folks who I really respect and deeply admire. So Michelle, yeah, you gave a great intro on my background, and in particular, I feel like a lot of what I'm aiming to bring to YVSC really does grow out of my time with U.S. Senator Michael Bennett, working on the ground across essentially the northwest quadrant of the state, and so I won't go more on that. I will say it was really cool. I had just joined the senator's office, and I don't quite remember how, but I was connected to Sarah Jones, who was then the executive director at YVSC. And I remember I sat down with Scott Connor, who was the board chair at that time. And I thought to myself, wow, this is really cool what YVSC is trying to do. It was also a different organization at that time. It was far smaller. So I've had the joy of watching YVSC grow in size, grow in its impact, refining its mission and priority areas. So that's been 6 years, but it's impressive, the growth and the impact. And so I'm now 2 weeks in. So I've now seen a little bit of this current leadership team in action, starting Michelle and Tim, Paul, Jayla. It's the entire team. It's been great to meet our interns, and thanks to Cody Dolan for leading our internship program. So, it's awesome to be part of a vibrant team. It's awesome to be in an office, and 602 Oak is an awesome new space. If you haven't been to the YVSC office since they've moved, please stop by. So there are kind of three parts to my talk here. First, some real life examples about my past professional work. I have two that I think are relevant. Second, my role as this new position unfolds, policy director. What will I be doing? What will be relevant for all of you as partners? And then third, I could have gone many different directions, but I'm gonna talk. I think it's because I've thought a lot about this in particular the past 6 years living in the Yampa Valley, but this more kind of existential question, why climate and resiliency matter, why it matters here and now. How do we continue to execute on our game plan, right? How do we continue to do this? And it's in this current time of extreme political uncertainties, in particular, those at the federal level. So, and then let me note, so I've been tasked again to chat for a while, but I truly am eager to learn, to listen to ideas, identify open questions, and I want to carry on this evolving and far larger conversation. And so I hope that really just for my purposes in YVSC, it starts today. And as I talk, if I'm not being clear, if you want to jump in and interrupt me, that's completely fine. So please, if you have a question, feel free to jump in. So let me start with a couple. It starts for me with this kind of thinking about capacity for change, for action spurred by change agents. And I guess the spoiler alert is that we are the critical change agents here, right? All of us. So here are a couple of experiences that I think are applicable to YVSC in our collective work. I graduated in 2007 from college. I drove across the Midwest to central Iowa, and I joined the presidential campaign of Barack Obama, who at that point was a little known Democrat, at least little known outside this kind of bubble of federal political insiders. I think he had something like 2% support nationally and was already facing several formidable candidates, but two in particular, Hillary Clinton and John Edwards. So, and when I took this job, I had interned in the Senate during college, during the summer in college. But I got to know Obama, and I wasn't at that time. I was kind of thinking he's going to be a powerful figure in Democratic politics, right, and in the world of politics. But did I really think when I got there that he would be winning the 2008 Democratic caucus in Iowa or the Democratic primary, right, for the 2008 presidential election? Maybe, but I think back, I'm not sure if I did. And so, point being is, even if you have some doubts about making change when the task seems really hard, it's possible. And so, of course, I was wrong about Obama and his ability to capture votes in the Democratic primary season of 2008. Um, and so what I'll hone in on is this. I had this experience. I was assigned to be a field organizer in a central county in Iowa. It was a small rural county. It was Boone County. Still love the people of Boone County. I still have some folks that I stay in touch with there. And so that's 18 years ago. And it's Boone County is working class. The household median income at the time was just over $40,000, so about 60,000 in today's dollars. It was the county was, and I believe still is, it's 95% plus white or Caucasian. I've told this story before, but the county sheriff took me aside at the 4th of July parade through the downtown in Boone, the main street. And he kind of took me aside, and there hadn't yet been any other field organizers in Boone because it was 6 months before the Iowa caucus. But he kind of said, son, you're in God's country now. And so be careful. And it did scare me a bit, but it ultimately, it was a fine primer, like, because I became friendly with the sheriff. He was a decent and thoughtful guy. He was deeply religious, but it just shows you that you kind of have to, when you come into a new job, into a new place in life, you really do need to tread cautiously and be careful, but also not be afraid to speak out. So at any rate, I spent my days finding ways to meet others. I tried to learn values, things that matter to them. I started small. I found some unlikely caucus goers, at least from a historical sense. I found some high school seniors that were willing to support Barack Obama. I found some politically unaffiliated soccer moms. And I tried to steer clear of divisive messaging. Um, and I connect this concept to what we're facing today in the sense that it's not about standing atop the mountain and screaming, we're the Green New Deal. Anyone else who doesn't believe us can shove it, right? And I don't think any of us think that. But I think that we have to remain principled, but we have to search for common ground. And I think if we can do that, things pay off. And embrace the mantra, our vision really isn't that different from yours. And yeah, at times it is, but I think more often than not, it's not that different. So can we find collective vision of long-term community resilience? Can we preserve our natural surroundings, preserve our people, preserve our way of life? I think we can do all of this, and I think we can promote equitable and long-term economic prosperity. So I think we can do all of that and fulfill on our mission, right? So just back to Iowa, fast forward, Obama, or starting in July 2007, our internal polling said he had about 5% support amongst these likely Democratic caucus goers. Progressives like Bill Bradley and Howard Dean in 2000 and 2004 had secured about 20% of caucus goers in Boone. They lost handily to these establishment figures like Al Gore and John Kerry. But by January 3rd, 2008, at the Iowa caucus, Barack had just over 30% in Boone County, which again seemed kind of insurmountable. When I first started, if I thought we could capture 1/3 of the county, given its demographics, I would have been really happy. Edwards took 31% in Boone. Hillary took 34%. We lost the county, but we handily won the Iowa caucus. And I really do feel like this propelled President Obama to that Democratic nomination. So what we face here in the Yampa Valley, not mirror images to that, but I remember thinking back, I remember stressing resolve. I didn't want to shy away because something was hard. And I wanted to be okay with, small and incremental wins. And I think we can all take to that. Um, so I think that's how you can win long term, right? Oh, and the final point, I think on Iowa and Obama, it's I relied on, and it was just, I was the sole field organizer. I relied on this amazing group of local volunteers. And some had existed for a long time within the local Democratic Party, but a lot of others were first timers. And I'd argue they were my indispensable partners. And so they, like all of you, are the indispensable partners to YVSC. Um, so that's one. The second example is much more grounded in the valley, and I do have a PowerPoint that I'm going to share. It's this is a when I was working for Senator Bennett, and Senator Bennett came to the Yampa Valley, and in particular to Craig back in 2020, and he met with Moffat County and Craig leadership, and the county assessor Chuck Cobb. I think Chuck's retired, I believe, since that time. But he took Michael through this kind of these different really concerning figures about what will happen when these coal-fired power plants, but in particular Craig Station and Craig, what will happen when they close to the property tax base in Moffat County. And this one of our esteemed board members, but I call her a friend, Jennifer Holloway, head of the chamber. She was the only one that was willing to pose for a picture with Michael Bennett, and I was able to find the Facebook posts. And folks in Craig maybe weren't that impressed with Michael Bennett, the one guy with the L. So I think point being is we certainly had our work cut out for us. And these problems were real, right? If the community loses 500 to plus jobs, or I guess probably not quite 500, but between Hayden and Craig, over 500 jobs. There's just been state legislation passed to incentivize coal closures, Senate Bill 181. Again, set that aside, just think about the impact to this community that had powered our state and arguably our nation for decades, right? And Michael Bennett, he secured, I think in 2010, about 20% of the vote in Moffat County, in 2016, about the same. So, and there are only 650 registered Democrats in Moffat County, so I should point that out. But Michael came back to me and to a few other staffers right after that meeting, and here this is a good example because they talked about look at what happened in Montrose, Colorado, at Nucla and Natarita, and look at their household income, right? Look, once their plants closed, household income dropped. And the part of the problem is federal government funding often only funds communities in distress. They don't fund communities that know they're about to enter distress, right? They don't, so you had to like wait for that fiscal cliff to be, to have your community basically, in a state of disrepair, and then at that point you can access federal funds. And so Michael, the moral part of Michael Bennett said that's not right. Like what can we do to prevent this? Let me see if I can the next slide. So our staff, and it was not just me, but I had a great staff, colleagues around me with Senator Bennett's office. We kind of went out into the literature, and we found a guy named Mark Haggerty. He now works at the Center for American Progress, but he was in I think Wyoming at the time at Headwaters Economics. A guy named Tony Pippa who works at Brookings. We tried to educate ourselves on what can we do at the federal level? And we also thought about the workers, but we saw that former Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio, he had already legislation on supporting workers. Now that legislation unfortunately still hasn't passed, but the point being is we saw there was a space where we felt like we could make a policy related difference. And so and this was again fairly early on in my Bennett tenure, so I tried to engage lots of different groups across the West Slope. Local governments, COGS, institutions of higher education, labor unions, nonprofits, you name it. And we tried to even say, how can we help? What can we do, right? And we ended up, this was then the pandemic hit, and we ended up writing a letter to the Domestic Policy Council and the National Economic Council. And we honed in on some of these issues, but we also identified that there was a program within the under the Department of Commerce that did assistance to coal communities within the general EDA, Economic Adjustment Assistance and Public Works Program. But that program had only been funded at maybe $10 million to $30 million annually between 2015 and 2020. So along comes the American Rescue Plan Act, and we were able to, along with others, but I think our advocacy was able to up that amount to $300 million to then be dispensed over the coming few years. So a huge, huge increase in funding through this program for coal communities. We also did draft legislation, which I was intimately a part of. It hasn't really gone anywhere. It essentially was trying to create a non-governmental, nonprofit corporation that's kind of insulated from the federal government, but seeded with money from the federal government to provide ongoing assistance to fossil fuel communities that may face a closure in the future or that have already faced a closure. So we were trying to solve this problem. But at any rate, we were able to go back to our colleagues, even some conservative colleagues like the Associated Governments of Northwest Colorado and thoughtful people. And they supported our legislation, which was pretty cool. And they also really appreciated the work we had done to bring this new program, or to essentially see this existing program with a lot more money, the assistance to coal communities. So over the coming 2 fiscal years, 2021 and 2022, I believe, we were able to get, or really we worked with local communities like Hayden. We worked with Craig to leverage this program to secure about $8 million. They did the heavy lifting, but we certainly supported them in this effort. We used what are now called congressionally directed spending programs, or earmarks, for over $10 million for, again, these coal impacted communities. We looked at, there were some programs within USDA. We were able to secure over $7 million through USDA programs. So we were able to really, I called them hitting singles and doubles, but for these communities, that the Moffat County Courthouse, we secured almost $5 million for the courthouse. It's impressive, and it's been really helpful to Moffat County as it diversifies its economy and tries to go through this transition. And the last thing, I think it was never lost on us that no one wants to have some leader in DC come in and tell them what they need to do, but to try to bring thought leaders into this region who may, who can listen and think hard about some of these issues. So there was a senior advisor at the Department of Energy that came in, and it was, I thought, really helpful. It's continued to help, maybe not in the last year, but through the end of the Biden administration, in bringing more resources to Northwest Colorado. So yeah, what does this mean? Continue to engage, continue to ask questions, continue to work on the ground with local leaders, and look for, maybe even look for something bigger, but don't be upset if you're only getting some singles and doubles. That's still pretty good. So that's kind of, again, I think that's the type of thinking and the way in which I'm going to try to approach bringing work to YVSC, or bringing a new role to YVSC. And on that note, I think I'll try to, I realize now I'm already like 15, 20 minutes in. So let me talk quickly about, here's what I think are my the four key components of my role that, and some of this has been thanks to Michelle and others to help me think about this. But the four areas: policy tracking and analysis, advocacy, that's 2, partner support and strategic partner engagement, 3, and 4, acting as a trusted resource for internal support. So starting with policy tracking and analysis, this seems pretty straightforward, but it could be local, it could be state, it could be federal. It doesn't just have to be policy formation, right? It could be committee and commission hearings, rulemaking with agencies, markups, legal rulings, compliance and non-compliance, you name it. And did I stop sharing? Cool, thank you. So, can I track everything? No. Will I rely on others who may say, hey, you should really be on this webinar, or have you been watching this, this new debate, right? But there are plenty of different pieces of publications like the Hill and Roll Call at the federal level, or Colorado Politics. I even, Yampa Valley Bugle, the Steamboat Pilot, right? Steamboat Radio. I mean, so trying to just keep your eyes and ears to the ground. And then, if you're going to synthesize this stuff, it's got to be further shaped by my conversations with YVSC staff and with other key stakeholders, with all of you. So that's what I think of when I think of policy tracking and analysis. In terms of advocacy, I want to be real clear that advocacy to me and in this role is not, it's not formal lobbying. At least I don't anticipate it will be. I'm not about to go to Denver, right? To, during session and play the lobbyist role. I think there are many other, though, strategic ways in which we can advocate for policies that matter. And so that's to me what is advocacy. It's, and it's also, it's leveraging relationships. So with my time with Senator Bennett's office, got to know local electeds, have tremendous respect for local electeds who have very challenging jobs and often have other jobs, right? For, city council, right? But state legislators, local officials, state agency officials, council of government groups, right? And then, there's so many different key interest groups, and I really feel fortunate to have gotten to know many of them. A couple that come to mind, like the Blue Green Alliance, Conservation Colorado, Western Resource Advocates, American Rivers, cattlemen's groups, right? Or like I mentioned COGS, but the Colorado Association of Ski Towns. It's been really like to get their perspective and to have some engagement with these different groups has been really valuable. I hope to continue that. So third partner support, strategic partner engagement. This is where I hope to strengthen my relationships with you and ensure that you have another trusted voice where you can go for assistance. So it could be a conversation that helps each of our organizations better plot pathways forwards. It could be, again, you highlighting some things for me you think I should think about. Um, just know I want to find time to share with you what we're thinking about and seek your feedback, but I also want to be really respectful and mindful of your time. And then the last item is, providing that in this new role, providing some internal support. And I really do think I'll be as much leaning on my colleagues as they might be leaning on me at the get-go, but I really do think that over time I can be, significant value add to this entire team and to all of its partners. So that's kind of that second piece. The last piece, and I don't have too much left. I thought about this, this more philosophical. It's philosophical, but I do want to stay grounded here with some real world examples as I think about like, so why, why resiliency, right? Why now? Why should our small yet precious region of the world continue on this path? Implementing a climate action plan, right? Attacking head on these resiliency issues and challenges that we face. And also, is it okay to acknowledge that on some level we're a small piece of the puzzle, right? I don't think that's lost on any of us, but I'll come back to these at the end. But I've had these conversations in recent years, but even in recent days, where I hear from smart and thoughtful and caring leaders who share some version of this idea that more often than not, we have to make some choice between climate action or resiliency and economic vitality. And that we're going to spend, so much that we can't balance our budget or we can't confront other really pressing issues in this valley, like housing or cost of living, right? And I also, it's not lost on me that elected officials are generally term limited. So I think it by nature makes them more inclined to prioritize opportunities that provide for immediate wins, right? Versus thinking longer term, versus thinking 5, 10, 20 years out. Where will we be in the Yampa Valley in 2045? So my argument is these investments in resilient land and water, energy, multimodal transit, waste, but general livability and walkability of our community, I think they truly work in complementary fashion to economic vitality. And I also, this is not me saying throw short-term fiscal responsibility out the window. It definitely doesn't mean that either, right? It does mean let's look 5, 10, and let's look at that 5 and 10 and 20-year return on investment and growth of quality of life. So one example, which I just thought was interesting, thinking about other communities, Ithaca, New York, right? City in upstate New York. It's a little larger population than all of Routt County. Its local council passed a policy in 2019 that actually they did call, it's kind of funny, the Ithaca Green New Deal, but it aimed to put the city on a path to achieving carbon neutrality by 2030. So it was pre-pandemic 2019. And to be real, like from everything I've read, it's not likely that the city will meet this ambitious goal by 2030. And the biggest barrier, if you can guess, it's funding, right? Or lack of funding. But it doesn't mean that implementing this policy to the best of the city's ability didn't have benefits. And let's look at some KPIs or key performance indicators on the city's relative economic health from 2019 to 2025. So again, we're looking pre-pandemic. So during the pandemic, there was some weird stuff that went on with KPIs, but they saw 10% annual growth in household median income. City saw more than a 25% growth in annual non-property tax revenue. So primarily sales tax. The city only saw 2% population growth. So you can't say, oh, the sales tax revenue increased because the population increased. And it was tough. I was searching last night. I couldn't find the perfect data on poverty rate, but from what I could tell, city saw about maybe a 4% decline in its poverty rate. And so take this with a grain of salt, not claiming, to be an expert in all the politics, socioeconomic dynamics, other issues at play in this city and that region and that state. But clearly, the resiliency policies Ithaca passed and tried to implement, they didn't tank the city, right? It wasn't like an either or. And Ithaca is being held up as a model. It's also refining technologies and methods, and it's doing it in a way that positions it in a really good spot for the future. So those are takeaways on Ithaca. And one other piece that I thought was interesting, I was just thinking about what are towns that have been ambitious, dating back the last century plus. And these towns invested in something on the cutting edge at various points, dating back to, I'll get to 3 towns. But their goals were, let's invest real money, but to provide a better quality of life for our residents over the near and long term. And I haven't done a perfect deep dive on each, but all of these towns still appear to be thriving. One's Riverside, Illinois, the Frederick Law Olmsted design town. He was the designer of New York Central Park. His work in Riverside dates back to 1869. Greenbelt, Maryland. It had a focus on footpaths and green spaces in the New Deal era of the 1930s. And then many of you probably know Seaside, Florida, right? What became known as new urbanism, but it was developed in the early 1980s. They invested, and I think they're still doing pretty well. So final points, this is kind of going back to those original philosophical questions. I don't think there is a better time than now. There will always be uncertainties. I really believe we can build a better community. I think we can protect our region as best we can. And I think we can continue to care about measures of equality for all of our residents. So I think we can do all that. And I think we can serve as a model. I think we already, to a certain extent, are a model. And we arguably have unique wealth, and we certainly have unique attributes. So I think we can make this moral choice, and I think we can do it in the right way. And I also think our work will truly yield those awesome returns on investment in terms of economic vitality, especially if we look out 5, 10, and 20 years. For me to end, I'll just say let's win, and I'm really excited to be with all of you and with YVSC. So from there, I will open it up.
Great. Thank you so much, Matt. Such a pleasure to have you. So now we'll shift over to Q&A. Again, I have just a handful of individuals who have said they wanted to self-introduce and share comments and questions, but we have a wonderful group of attendees today. So please do, turn your camera on, and I would love for everyone to just say hello. If you have a question or comment, that would be great too. No, this is just hopefully a first meeting of Matt, and I invite everyone to reach out and set up a time, and we'll find more ways to connect. But I have Gail Gary, so City Council President with City of Steamboat Springs, leading us off. And if you are interested in just self-introducing, you can turn your camera on and then raise your hand or otherwise. But this is around the table, warm welcome conversation. So thank you, Gail, and I'll let you lead us off with Q&A or just self-introductions.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Michelle. As Michelle mentioned, my name is Gail Gary. I'm honored to serve as president of the Steamboat Springs City Council, and also honored to be able to serve on the YVSC board. So certainly want to say welcome, Matt. We're really excited, from the YVSC board perspective to have you and all of kind of the insights and the expertise that you bring to YVSC, and really looking forward to working together on that as we move forward. And so thank you in terms of the information that you provided. That's a good kind of grounding in terms of where you're going to be coming from and some of your different thoughts. And maybe just to delve a little bit deeper and put you on the spot after 2 days, but I know you've probably been thinking about this for a while, and you're certainly not new to the subject. the climate action plan here in Routt County. You're certainly not new to Routt County, or, kind of the issues that you see, as you mentioned, Dylan, and all of the great work that he does in the Steamboat Pilot. And, there's always something definitely interesting to read. So really just curious what you see as the opportunities here in our community, kind of specifically as they relate to the climate action plan, and maybe even when we talk about decarbonization and electrification, right? There's a lot of things going on, and whether it's that topic or as anything that has kind of struck you as you are getting grounded, and particularly in light of the experience that you bring to the table.
Sure. Well, and we're going through right now this kind of updating of inventory data relative to 2018. And so, we still have a long way to go in terms of reducing our vehicles' miles traveled, right? We know that's a large emitter. We continue to have, air travel is still an emitter. There's still a lot more we can do to safeguard our forests and make our forests better carbon sinks. All of those items require time and money. So I don't think there is extreme low-hanging fruit. I know I did not get to watch council's meeting, or Alicia, her presentation last night on waste and diversion, but I think all of those things, even just transit, thinking using this regional transportation authority, which will be put to the ballot, but assuming it passes, to be a vehicle to make it if it's easy. If you make something easy, folks, we all know from a sociological and psychological, make it easy and folks will do it. So no, I don't think there's any extreme low-hanging fruit. And if there were, I know you are smart enough, and I know our council is smart enough that they would have taken action. Building codes and land use, I'm sure on the margins. And essentially we have to find ways to remove fossil fuels, which means to my mind, natural gas. So there are opportunities probably within each, but we also know that at the federal level, we had unprecedented opportunity to seek funding, and now that's going to become much more challenging, at least in this current climate. So I think we just have to be really, I do think we have to be fiscally prudent about where we spend our money. And I think we have to provide the right incentives, and just some top-down mandate could end up backfiring. So I think we have to be really thoughtful about how we go about doing that. That's more thinking locally. But certainly at the state level, I think there are opportunities. The state has taken on a bunch of different ambitious goals, and how we can work with our state legislators and state agencies to continue to advance those goals, or get closer to meeting those goals, I think will help us locally, but also will help us as a state. So that's a little bit of a cop out, but give me another month or two, and I hope to have even more of a fine, a better, more refined answer.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. I think you definitely hit on, a lot of the items that are being looked at, and certainly right within the lens of the economic headwinds that we're facing, as well as a less friendly federal environment. So I think, to your point in your presentation, we're going to have to work very strategically as well as with partners in order to think creatively and be successful to continue to move these things forward. So thank you.
Right. And also just, I do think continue our partners across the Yampa Valley, right? Can we have some very small wins that make sense for the Valley, make sense for YVSC, make sense for our climate action plan, but makes sense for Craig and Moffat County? Can we find, I think there probably aren't any real big ones, but can we hit some singles? So I think there's some opportunity there.
Great. Thank you so much for the question. And next we have Julie Suter, who was Matt's counterpart, but Julie Suter is our regional director with Congressman Negus's office. Many of us had the pleasure to see her, I guess, earlier this year, maybe last fall. Actually, last fall. It was last fall. It feels like a whirlwind. But Julie, it's wonderful to see you again, and thank you for joining, and welcome.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. Great to see everybody. I have just a few updates. I'm sure folks are quite familiar that the reconciliation bill passed, and was certainly bad news for a lot of the priorities that are climate related, including the putting sooner sunsets on a lot of the climate programs in the Inflation Reduction Act. And so I think that, one piece of advice that that I would have, and I'm happy to help if needed, but Matt's super capable and all of you as well, is having a good calendar of when those expiration dates are on all of those IRA programs. Some of them are for local governments, some of them are for private sector folks, some of them for individual consumers, some of them for vehicle owners or homeowners, or programs that work with rental housing or lower income housing. And so to have a good calendar of the new expiration dates of all of those programs, and for the ones that are consumer facing, to broadcast those and let people know that, they have this long to get that $700,000 electric vehicle tax credit, or a credit for solar panels or what have you. And so get it while it's hot, and to the extent that people have been sort of mulling this over and thinking they had a few years to figure it out, there's nothing like an urgent deadline to inspire action. So kind of find the silver lining there and encourage folks to get free money while it's there, because it's going out the door soon. And one thing I would say too, in relation to climate action, where support from the federal government is concerned, that I think one of the advantages that we have is that we live in this wonderful state of Colorado that still has lots of great programs that communities like ours can take advantage of. So there's still help out there, and you live in Route County, that is this amazing county that has all of these wonderful plans and great organizations like YVSC, and the possibility of forming this new regional transit authority. So there's so many great institutional anchors and footholds and handholds that we still have, and so we can still propel ourselves up that wall. And then to get a little bit more philosophical, the Trump administration is certainly exhibiting lots of authoritarian behavior, and there are lots of kind of big picture conversations and questions about, are we headed towards authoritarianism in this country? And we are really seeing very legitimate blows to democracy at the moment. But one of the things that we see in history that is a buttress to authoritarianism is a strong civil society. And so generally societies that do have strong civil society, so great NGOs and state governments and strong networks, that those form the resistance to a fall into authoritarianism, and really can prevent that. And so I think about that in the big picture, just when things get kind of scary, in terms of the health of our democracy, but then also in the more narrow scope of climate action, which is really an existential issue for our mountain communities. That the same is true in that narrower window, I think, that, we'll keep doing this work, we'll keep strong partnerships, we'll keep bringing people into this work, educating them, partnering with them, taking action together, and that will continue the work, and it will continue to lay the foundation for us to turn this ship around and be able to set ourselves up to take advantage when we do so, in the spirit of optimism. So what else would I like to say? So in terms of the reconciliation bill, just some evidence of that, the Senator Lee from Utah introduced an amendment to sell off millions of acres of public land, BLM and National Forest Service land. He introduced that amendment even 3 or 4 times in different versions throughout the process, sometimes in the dark of night. And it really was this outcry, and not just people saying like, I hate this, but people working together and working hard. And it really was that network of organizations that are invested in the value of our public lands and understand how important they are to our water and our health and our recreation and our economies, and people really working together to rise up against that, to defeat that amendment and get it totally eliminated from the reconciliation bill. So that was a major defensive victory, which we were excited about, in recognition that there was certainly a lot to be I think really disappointed in, and does represent, will really make life harder for millions of Americans. And then we also do need to look forward to the FY26 budget discussions and the appropriations process. The White House has proposed major cuts again to NOAA, U.S. Forest Service, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Natural Resources Conservation Service. So, all of these programs, we're going to have to continue to fight that fight and make our voices heard collectively and individually about the impacts that those cuts would have. The congressman right now is leading an effort, a bipartisan effort, to push back against the cuts to NOAA and all their important research that relates to our understanding of climate change, and and as well as resilience and our ability to be resilient in the face of the impacts of climate change. And right now we're seeing those impacts firsthand in states across the country. So we're seeing flooding in Texas, flooding in New Mexico down in Ruidoso. We're seeing fires, devastating fires in Arizona and Colorado that are having major impacts on some of our crown jewels of the national park system. So these impacts are very real, and we need to kind of keep those in the conversation, and and keep talking about how these cuts are going to reduce the ability of all Americans to be resilient in the face of these changes. So yeah, so that's a little update in terms of what's going on. The House is about to go into recess in 9 days, into the summer recess, although my boss doesn't like to call it recess. He likes to call it the district work period. So he brings his work to the district. So I imagine we will certainly be back in Routt County. I think we'll probably make some stops right around the Colorado Water Congress. We had a really wonderful visit this spring. I see JC on the line. Thanks so much to CMC for hosting us. Thanks to Michelle for leading a really wonderful discussion about natural resources, our forests and water. And so, yeah, we'll keep looking for opportunities to play defense where we need to, and to play some offense where we can. And we certainly continue to look forward to partnering with all of you to identify those opportunities to work together. And I also will say we had a town hall in Frisco on Friday evening, and I'm sure a lot of the same questions that were on the minds of Summit County folks, Routt County folks might have similar questions. And there was a really nice article in the Summit Daily that I just posted in the chat. If you'd like to hear what the congressman's latest thoughts are on where we stand at the federal level, and some reflections on the reconciliation bill and how we move forward. So thank you very much. It's great to see all of you, and look forward to seeing you in person in the next few weeks.
And hey, this reminds me, I didn't give a shout out to, we have three amazing federal legislators in Senator Bennett, but also Senator Hickenlooper and obviously Congressman Neguse, who is in leadership in the House. And we are indebted to them. So thanks, Julie, and completely agree with these phase outs. And I saw Gail Gary just figuring out how we publicize when things will be phasing out. Certainly ITC and PTC for solar and wind. That's commercial, but there are many other things, tax credits for electric cars, chargers, rooftop solar panels, heat pumps, you name it. So figuring all that out, I haven't wrapped my head around all of that, but I think that's a task for all of us. I completely agree. So thank you.
And so wonderful to see you again, Matt.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Julie, and thank you for the updates. And we do look forward to seeing you around Water Congress, so please reach out. Okay, so if anyone else has any comments or want to turn your camera on and just self-introduce, I know we have actually 7 of our 13 YVSC board members present, so that's a sign of our enthusiasm and warm welcoming of Matt to the team. You're welcome to, Andrea, I see that you're unmuted, so if you want to say hello, and if anyone else on the board would like to say hello, and then please, anyone else on the call, consider us at a table around a room. Wish we could have found one, but thank you for joining. Andrea.
Hi, Matt. Just wanted to say hi, welcome. I'm on the YVSC board as well, and we've been looking forward to you joining. So really happy to both see you and hear a little bit about you today, and look forward to meeting. I'll let everyone else go. I had a question, but I'll ask you in person when we get to see each other.
That sounds great. Thanks.
Paul, yeah.
Yeah, Paul Hebert. I'm also on the board. Matt, it's great to see you. We've had previous contact over the past few years, and I'm just delighted to see that you're now on the board. I'm about to track off of the board because I've been on now for 6 years, and it's been great seeing the growth of YVSC in terms of programs and activities. And when we developed our 5-year plan nearly 5 years ago, two of the things that we really emphasized was the need for developing an advocacy policy and how we would go about doing that, and also tracking of policies on local, state, and national levels. And I think we haven't had the resources to do that adequately over these years. And it's just wonderful to see that you're now in a policy position where you can take on some of those roles. And just to say how delighted we are that
Absolutely.
you've joined
Couldn't agree with you
the
more. Thanks, Paul.
Great. Thank you, Paul. And others might not be in a position to speak, but we have Lee White joining. We have Sarah Jones. Sarah Jones also wears 2 hats like Gail Gary, who's a city council president and also on the board. I saw Sarah Loughran is on here. We have Deborah Sauerman. And I think that is our board. So really just a warm welcome, and we'll have many opportunities to gather. And then if anyone else has any questions or comments, you're welcome. I'll stop talking and you can either raise your hand or unmute. And then, of course, thank you to those that are posting things in the chat, but we do have a lot of our great community leaders joining. We have Josh Hankus, Routt County Wildfire Mitigation Council. Andy Bauer is with the Nature Conservancy. Mike Beyer is with Yampa Valley Electric Association. Carol, who is a longstanding community leader, and Bob Woodmansey joining from faculty. So really, thank you everyone for joining, and I'll pause, and you're welcome to self-introduce or have questions.
I'm Ben from the Steamboat Ski Area Sustainability Coordinator over here. Just wanted to welcome you and say how lucky we are to have you. We're really, really grateful that you've decided to make this change, and I think we're all really excited about it. I have one really quick question. I just want you to answer in kind of a couple sentences. Really hoping to just understand how you see policy fitting into the overall climate action, and why policy is important in your eyes to this overall puzzle.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, we won't be able to solve this without meaningful and bold policy that really has to happen at the federal level. And then we have to work through international diplomacy if we want to solve the world's climate crisis to do it internationally.
Thank you.
Great. And Joella West is also on City Council, City of Steamboat Springs City Council. Joella, thank you so much for joining. Okay. Well, if there are no other questions to pose to Matt, really nice job. Thank you for the, introducing yourself to us. For all attending, please do reach out to Matt. As you can hear, he has a wealth of knowledge and just brings a really thoughtful approach to this work as well. Something that I think many of us recognize in our representatives in the state of Colorado is their ability to be bipartisan and lead in a very, bipartisan manner that really looks carefully at the ways in which Coloradoans are connected to land and one another through these core values. And so Matt really brings that to his approach. We are really looking forward to building, bolstering collaborations and partnerships that put us on track to a more resilient future, more vibrant economy. And like Matt mentioned at the outset, there really are strong intersections between decarbonization, resilience, and economic vitality. For those that are joining for the, energy transition discussions, as we choose new energy choices, for energy generation in Northwestern Colorado, there are great opportunities to do low carbon energy sources. And for those that join for the hearings too, we just had really strong testimonials from the fire chief in town of Hayden, the school district superintendent there, Eric. So really wonderful representatives that serve the region effectively. And so again, I think our goal at YVSC is to really find those intersections and bolster our collaborations to bring people together. And it really is, as Julie, you also underlined, it's such an important time to find those opportunities to just build momentum, where it is continuing to grow, and we are in a very unique state. So we at YVSC look forward to working with all of you. Again, Matt, welcome. Thank you so much for joining our team, and everyone reach out. And I hope you have a wonderful Wednesday and keep up all of your wonderful work.